Most importantly of all, ladies and gentlemen, in response to what the Cyprus Mail and others have been saying, it is utterly inappropriate and it is fundamentally dangerous to depict legal principles as part of a sterile, legalistic discourse. Recent history tells us what happens in democracies when you keep law and independent lawyers at arm's length from politics. You end up with the United States-led invasion of Iraq. You end up with the detention of people without charge or trial at Guantanamo Bay. And you end up with the grotesque sight of people using torture upon other people to extract confessions. I'm reminded of the great English philosopher John Locke, who in 1690 proclaimed, "Wherever law ends, tyranny begins." So in short, ladies and gentlemen, political criteria and political considerations and political motives should never displace the rule of law and the wonderful principles which are embedded within the rule of law as we understand the principle in open, civilised, liberal democracies such as the UK and, I might add, the Republic of Cyprus. The essential lesson of 20th century history from the Nazi and the Stalinist eras is exactly that. Law must triumph over politics, not the other way around. And indeed, it's the cardinal principle to emerge from the post-1945 War Crimes Tribunal at Nuremberg. I repeat and come back to my main argument. The rule of law must be understood, cherished and entrenched across the Eastern Mediterranean. It's something that everybody in that region should be able to rally around, irrespective of their religious or racial or ethnic background. Far from being sterile, ladies and gentlemen, the rule of law is a wonderful concept. It was referred to by the Court of Appeal in the judgment in the Apostolides case. I can just quote to you here from what US Supreme Court Justice Kennedy said a few years ago about the law, in different contexts, but this encapsulates what we lawyers mean by the law. For us, law is a liberating force. It's a promise. It's a covenant. It says that you can hope, you can dream, you can dare, you can plan, you can have joy in your existence. And what frightens me about Cyprus is that instead of us building a settlement there built on liberty, we're negotiating in secret, so I don't exactly know what's going on, but it appears that negotiations are taking place in secret to build a settlement on restrictions on liberty. Instead of building a settlement on human rights, we may be building a settlement on restrictions on human rights. And conceptually, that's inappropriate. And ethically, it's improper. Now, the rule of law is not just... I'm going to try and finish my mind if I may. So 10 more minutes if I may. I'm going to try and... I'm not a politician, so I'm not going to go on and on and on.
Take a vote.
Now, the rule of law is a majestic concept. It trips off the tongues of politicians. We lawyers use it all the time. But it's also embedded in law. Very important for people to understand this. Let me draw your attention to Article 2 of the Treaty of European Union, as amended by the Lisbon Treaty last December. Now remember, as I read this binds the Republic of Cyprus. I want the Cyprus Mail to know that. This binds the Republic of Cyprus. And I want the Cyprus Mail and everybody else in Cyprus who's engaging in this sort of debate to ask themselves, are these phrases that I'm going to read now sterile? This, by the way, is the treaty that formed the backdrop to the Apostolides case. It was the treaty that enabled Mr. Apostolides to refer his matter to the European Court of Justice from the Court of Appeal in London. So it's not just some empty phrase, and it's not some empty treaty. It's a treaty that has formed the backdrop human dignity. Freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, and respect for human rights, including the rights of persons belonging to minorities. These values are common to the EU member states in a society in which pluralism, non-discrimination, tolerance, justice, solidarity, and equality between women and men prevail. These, ladies and gentlemen, are the European values which reflect the triumph of democracy over both Nazism and Stalinism. What does the European Union consist of? A large number of member states who were either occupied by Nazi Germany or Stalin's or Brezhnev's or Khrushchev's Soviet Union. Let me therefore just turn to the crux of the matter before pulling some concluding thoughts together. What is the rule of law? It's a phrase that, as I've illustrated, appears in the Treaty on the European Union, but it's not defined either there or in any other major international treaty. And we have to turn to one of the greatest judges of recent years, Lord Bingham, for the explanation. Lord Bingham recently retired as a judge, having served as Master of the Rolls, Lord Chief Justice and Senior Law Lord. He's widely regarded as the greatest judge of his generation, and in retirement he's written this wonderful book, The Rule of Law, which I would encourage you to read. It's aimed at non-lawyers, and I would encourage every politician to read it, both here in Westminster and over in the Eastern Mediterranean. He sets out what we mean by the rule of law in open, civilised, liberal democracies. And this is what he says. He takes the origins of this wonderful phrase, the rule of law, back to antiquity, and to Aristotle's observation that it is better for the law to rule than for one of its citizens. So even the guardians of the laws are obeying the laws. So everybody, ladies and gentlemen, including President Christofias, Mr. Talat, Mr. Brown, our colleagues from the Foreign Office, everybody in this room, everybody is bound by the law. And it's one of the beauties of living in this country. I can take the Foreign Office to court in certain circumstances. I may win, I may lose, but I can take the Foreign Office to court in judicial review proceedings. That's the nature of the rule of law as it applies in a country such as this. Lord Bingham goes on to explain the core of the existing principle of the rule of law in the following terms. All persons and authorities within the state, whether public or private, should be bound by and entitled to the benefit of laws publicly and prospectively promulgated and administered in the courts. Everybody, therefore, is subject to the law. Nobody can stand up and say, I'm above the law. Turkish army can't say that. The president can't say that. Everybody is subject to the law. Lord Bingham, in a subsequent in a lecture given last year, clarified this point in a little bit more detail. Everybody should be bound by and entitled to the benefit of the law of the land. At the heart of the rule of law, surely, is the principle that the law binds everyone, including the powerful and the mighty. And I would add, particularly the powerful and the mighty. So the rule of law operates as a constraint on the exercise of public power and gives effect to the principle enunciated by a curious man called Dr. Thomas Fuller in 1733. Be you never so high, the law is above you. And that's a critically important point, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't think they fully understand it in Greece, Turkey, or Cyprus. In Greece, well, everybody's above the law. I go there several times. Nobody seems to comply with the smoking ban in public places. Zebra crossings are there to be parked on. Environmental dustbins, recycling dustbins are for any old rubbish. The politics is riven with one corruption scandal after another. There's no governance, as we understand it